Hey gang, so in remote today we're going to cover 4.6. Now that you've done the simulation with gerrymandering, you should understand the notes a little bit better. So here we go. So 4.6 standard is going to be on internal boundaries. So we've talked a lot about country boundaries and international boundaries, and now we're going to talk about internal boundaries that could be within a state. Okay. So the first key term now that you need to know is voting districts. And the definition is right there. It's a local geographic area of a larger country in which you vote for representatives to Congress. Okay. Now, what we talked about in the simulation yesterday you did in class was that the census is done every 10 years. And so those voting districts will be based on the population in the census, and a lot of those lines are going to be redrawn. Okay, so an example that you can put there is that these can be done at a different scale of analysis. They can be done at a county level, like El Paso County. They can be done at a state level, like Colorado, and they can be done at a country level. Okay. All right, the next key term is going to be redistricting, and all that means is internal political boundaries are redrawn after a census. We talked about this in the simulation as well, which determine voting districts for legislatures. Okay, so this is all that 435 number of House of Representatives is based on those census numbers and where we redraw lines. Okay, so an example of that is going to be, whoops. Where is my example? I thought I had an example here. Oh, let's look at this. For example, you can see this is a map based on the 2000 census and how it changed. Okay, so we take that 435, right, and based on where populations gained. So you can see that California gained a legislature, and so did Nevada. But look up here, we see some of these countries in the Midwest actually lost a representative, okay? And we see that Florida gained 2, and Texas gained 2. So those are some examples that you can use for redistricting, okay? So they redraw those lines based on those population changes. All right, and then the next key term is just gerrymandering. You should already know what this kind of is. It's just where you have the majority party in power. So whether that's Democrat or Republican, they are the ones that are going to redraw the districts, and they're always going to do it in such a way that it gives them a partisan advantage. Okay, so we have seen some examples in the video yesterday of some really crazy lines that were drawn. Okay, and then let's look at some of these examples here. The United States of America. Remember, we talked about that 435 for House of Representatives. It's based on the population of each state, so that the larger the state's population, the more representatives they get. That's why Colorado has 7 and California has 53. And make sure you understand that the U.S. Census is conducted every 10 years to recount that and reproportion how many representatives we have per state. Okay, and we already looked at that map. Okay, and some other examples here again in the United States is each state then redistricts its political boundaries to establish a voting districts for both House of Representatives and its own state government. So not only do we do this at a national level, we also do it at a state level as well. Okay, so this all is going to ensure that gerrymandering gets an advantage of whether it's the Democrats or the Republicans in power. They get to redraw the lines. Okay, last but not least, there are 2 main methods of gerrymandering, just to refresh your memory from your simulation. It's packing and cracking. So I would write those down and make sure you know what those mean. Packing is when you have a district full of the opposition party voters, okay? And then that is obviously that you're going to draw those lines to have as many of the majority as you can for your party. And then cracking is spreading it out, the opposition party voters throughout many districts. So it's going to be more fair. Okay. And then that last term we didn't talk about in class, but it's a pretty straightforward term. It's majority minority districts. So that's where you have a minority. So if those minorities of a race are actually are the majority voters in a district, that's what you would call a majority minority district. Okay, guys, that is it for 4.6. Hopefully this all was a great refresher from our simulation. Make sure you bring these in tomorrow so that you can get your points.